Korriban may have been the seat of ancient Sith power, along with being the final resting place of many Sith Lords and a hiding place for their holocrons and other teachings, but Korriban was also sometimes less than welcoming to the reigning Sith of any given day. Today we're going to cover Palpatine's 3 known trips to Korriban in Legends, and why each one ended so poorly for him. Sith relics in general, especially holocrons which held either the spirits or records of ancient Sith, were known to mock or even assault latter-day holders of the mantle of Sith Lord whom they felt were unworthy of the title. Darth Krayt was on the receiving end of this when confronted by Darths Andedu, Nihilus, and Bane, the last of whom called him a pretender to the Sith throne for his creation of the One Sith, which Bane said only served to dilute Krayt's own power. But that was nothing compared to what could await an errant Jedi or Sith in the Valley of the Dark Lords on Korriban. If you've played Knights of the Old Republic or even just Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, you know firsthand that the valley is chock full of ancient Sith spirits, just looking to regain their power at the right opportunity. But on top of these solo projects, they were also consulted by the reigning Sith on ways to increase that Sith's power. Consulted is probably not the right word, it usually was more of a demand considering how the Sith operate. And if there's one thing dead Sith don't appreciate any more than living Sith, it's having demands imposed upon them. Being that demanding could make a trip to Korriban very dangerous, and there's nobody more demanding than a guy looking for ways to guarantee he can rule the galaxy forever like Palpatine, or just looking for a way to like this video and subscribe for more. We have 3 known times Palpatine went to Korriban, 2 of which were to seek similar kinds of advice and which had massive implications for Palpatine, and then 1 which creates a whole weird set of lore which we'll talk about in the middle. We can probably assume that Palpatine had been to Korriban other times, but these are the 3 specific trips we know about. The first one occurs shortly after the Battle of Yavin, and is mentioned primarily in Star Wars Gamer number 5 and the Book of the Sith. Palpatine journeyed to the Valley of the Dark Lords and, quote, enraged the mummified Sith by demanding dark side knowledge, end quote. We don't know exactly what he was asking for this time, but whatever it was, he was insistent enough that the spirits nearly killed him, which even he admits in the Book of the Sith. There's not actually anything that explicitly confirms this was the same visit, so it's possible he had this same experience multiple times where he was nearly killed. It's more likely it was the same visit, but it's funnier if you assume it happened twice. He was only able to survive thanks to the quick work of his most loyal servant, another dark side user named Jang Droga, who returned his broken body to Coruscant. Gamer number 5 mentions Droga recovering a body from his cloning vats on Biss as well, so this is potentially one of the instances before Endor, which Palpatine alludes to in Dark Empire, where he had previously died and done a little essence transferring, meaning he was actually killed on Korriban, not just nearly killed. Notably, Jang Droga also became an anchor for Palpatine's spirit when he was killed on Endor. Droga was driven mad by sensing his master's destruction, and then his master's spirit just entered him, before taking residence in yet another clone on Biss. The second known visit comes shortly before the Battle of Endor, and is where things get a little weird lore-wise. This visit was part of a mission in Battlefront Renegade Squadron. The Rebellion was looking for more information on the garrisons on Endor before they assaulted the second Death Star, and so they decided the Emperor himself would be the only possible source for that information. So Han Solo led the elite Renegade Squadron in a raid to steal Palpatine's personal iPhone and retrieve the data they needed. In the game, you go to Korriban, you shoot at Palpatine a bunch, take his datapad, and then run away. This occurred during what the game calls a pilgrimage to Korriban, and there's a big crowd of stormtroopers and stuff, so there are some strange lore implications for this. For one thing, Palpatine generally didn't parade around the fact that he was a Sith. There were several people who did know, especially the servants more engrossed in the dark side, and some political leaders who were closer to him. But setting up a big military spectacle on Korriban like the game does diverge a bit from how we usually see Palpatine's public persona portrayed. Especially given that this was something the Rebellion was able to know about in Raid. The implication seems to almost be that this was a publicly scheduled event, but even if it's just within the military and the result of military leaks giving the Rebellion that information, it's still fairly strange. Battlefront lore is always kind of weird like that, but that's now 2 for 2 visits where Palpatine gets beaten up on for going to the Sith homeworld. Our third and final visit takes us to Empire's End Issue 2, the final part of the Dark Empire storyline with Palpatine's return, several years after his presumptive death at Endor. During this visit, he's once again seeking out advice from the mummified Sith, except this time we do know exactly what he's asking. He had taken up residence in a series of clone bodies upon his return, but the clone bodies were not able to properly contain his power. So Palpatine would rapidly burn through these bodies, more or less literally. He hoped the necropolis and its inhabitants could tell him how to extend his life further, and he even remarked that this strong dark side power at the necropolis alone could keep him alive. But as you might expect, given the fact that they were all dead themselves, the mummies had little in the way of useful advice on how to stop his current clone body from decrepifying to at least the point where he would be considered legally dead. Unlike Palpatine's prior experience getting beaten for being so demanding of the Sith services, the spirits seemed to take at least a bit of pity on the ailing Sith Lord. First, they mostly just asked if he would consider sticking around. He could have pretty much just died there and become one of them if he felt like it, and wasn't so bent on permanent galactic rule. They actually specifically offered him Vader's throne in their hall, meaning Palpatine and Vader had considered burial arrangements, but given that he was offered Vader's throne and not his own, there were only ever plans for Vader's potential funeral, not Palpatine's, which if I was Vader would probably raise some red flags for me. When Palpatine refused, they offered him one other alternative. A vision of Princess Leia and her youngest child, the baby Anakin Solo. According to the Sith, if Palpatine could capture the baby and transfer his essence into him, he would be able to continue living in the child's body, naturally strong in the Force as he was, could sustain Palpatine's power far better than the clone bodies or any other possible host. Palpatine had plenty of fairly powerful dark side acolytes, so if it was just a question of needing something other than a clone body or even needing a general Force-sensitive body, there were other options for him. But Palpatine was just so powerful that he required the specific body of Anakin Solo, the grandson of Darth Vader. This is of course not particularly dissimilar from what he does in the new canon where he wants to take his own granddaughter's body, but rather than sticking around on Korriban, this is the option that Palpatine pursues, trying to get the young Anakin Solo. So once again, Palpatine left Korriban near death, but this time at least he was no nearer to death than he was when he arrived. Not to spoil Empire's End any more than the title of the comic already does, but this plan, as you might expect, doesn't work out super well for Palpatine, and he dies for the final time shortly thereafter. That's going to do it for today's video recounting Palpatine's dangerous and deadly trips to Korriban. We're going to have the second Thrawn campaign animated breakdown episode soon. The animated map for that has been put on Patreon, and I'm nearly done with the other assets and editing. I have the whole script recorded, I have the map animation, so it's just kind of the final editing for that. I'd like to have it out this weekend. If you'd like to support the creation of those videos, please consider checking out the Patreon link in the description or becoming a channel member here on YouTube. That's all for today though, so thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.